Hello and welcome back to Vizura Recaps. The film opens with strange video footage of an experiment in process. A deceased pig lies on an operating table while medical experts perform an experiment to bring it back to life. They inject a mystery serum into the pig and start their machine. After a while, however, the pig springs to life and moves erratically before returning to its lifeless form. Following that, we encounter medical scientists Frank, the project leader, and his fiancée, Zoe, who have achieved a significant advance in their research. Their crew is made up of tech-savvy Nico, brainiac stoner Clay, and lovely filmmaker Eva, who records their tests and investigations. They work together to create a revolutionary serum called Lazarus. The serum's primary goal is to preserve neurological function in coma patients and extend the time frame during which they can be safely resurrected. Unexpectedly, it also has the ability to bring the dead back to life. The crew chooses to test the serum on Rocky, a recently deceased dog. Eva films the process, but there appears to be no response at first. However, on the second attempt, Rocky begins to bark and walk about, indicating that their experiment was successful. Later that evening, Frank and Zoe bring Rocky home, and they observe some unusual changes in his condition. They believe it is due to the shock of being resurrected from the dead. During the night, Rocky enters the bedroom and jumps into bed. Strangely, it remains there and observes Zoe while she sleeps. Rocky is scanned with an MRI in the laboratory the next day. Through it, they determine that the dog's brain is undergoing tremendous aberrant activity. They also discover that the serum is still in its bloodstream, despite the fact that it should have dissipated within hours. That night, Clay works alone in the lab while Rocky is safely contained in its cage. Suddenly, he hears a loud crash and finds the fridge open, its contents spilled across the room. Clay also observes that Rocky has escaped its prison. He attempts to coax it out, but to no avail. As he continues to examine the room, the dog approaches him and growls aggressively. The next day, Clay reports the occurrence to the rest of the crew. He insists that the dog be put down before its hostility escalates. However, the team dismisses his worries, claiming that he is overreacting. Later that day, the university dean calls Frank and chastises him for his questionable experiments. She feels he is playing God by resurrecting dead animals. So she cancels the program and withdraws their financing. Frank becomes sure that someone has been showing the dean footage of their research, particularly those involving serum testing on animals. To make matters worse, their shareholders arrive at the lab and disclose that a large pharmaceutical business has acquired the company that is supporting their project. This gives them ownership of the research, equipment, and serum. Frank and his crew are horrified by the news, but there is nothing they can do about it. In the heat of the moment, Zoe accuses Eva of being an informant for the dean because she has access to their film. She also highlights the timing of events, alleging that everything occurred after she arrived. After everyone has calmed down, the team decides to recreate the experiment and video it themselves. That night, they sneak into the lab using Eva's security card. They then set up the appropriate equipment and prepare another dead dog for the operation. Everything goes according to plan for the first few minutes. However, things take a grim turn when Zoe activates the main power switch and is electrocuted. The entire team panics when they realize she has no pulse. Frank then hurriedly injects an adrenaline shot into her chest, but Zoe remains unconscious. At this point, he discovers the engagement ring still on her finger, which leads him to believe it was the cause of the electrocution. Suddenly, he sets Zoe's lifeless body on the table, and everyone knows what he's going to do next, use the serum to bring her back. Clay, Nico, and Eva immediately express their worries, reminding him of the ethical implications of resurrecting a deceased human being. Frank, on the other hand, claims that if they do nothing, they would be held responsible for Zoe's death and could face manslaughter charges. This ultimately persuades the team, who reluctantly agree to assist him. In the following scene, Frank takes out the serum and injects it into Zoe's body. Everyone then eagerly awaits her resurrection, but it does not occur. Instead, Nico observes the security guard approaching their lab and hastily hides. When the guard eventually leaves, the group goes back to the lab. To their surprise, they see Zoe sitting upright on the table. Frank then begins to inspect her, but she grabs his wrist and wonders if she has just died. After that, the team performs an MRI scan on Zoe, which reveals an unexpected revelation. They notice that her body has nearly entirely recovered, and there is a lot of activity in her brain. Humans typically use only around 10% of their brain capacity, but Zoe is using all of it. It quickly becomes clear that something is not quite right with her. As she begins to use 100% of her brain's functions, she acquires unexpected abilities within herself. These include telekinesis, which lets her to manipulate items with her mind, telepathy, which allows her to predict what people are going to say, and the disturbing capacity to lure others into her horrific memories. Meanwhile, the crew becomes increasingly concerned about Zoe's shift, recognizing that she is no longer the same person. Frank then tells the staff to act normally around Zoe until they find a solution. Unbeknownst to them, she overhears their talk and becomes furious. As time passes, Zoe becomes more aware of odd changes within herself. Her fingertips and injection site darken without explanation, and the lights flicker erratically in her presence. Furthermore, she realizes that she receives electric shocks anytime she comes into contact with water. One evening, Zoe approaches to Frank and tells him about all of the unusual changes she is feeling. In one incident, she became trapped in a blazing apartment complex. However, Frank tells her that her tragic childhood experience has manifested as a nightmare ever since. It is revealed that Zoe was once trapped in a burning building and heard agonizing calls for assistance. Frank then injects Zoe with a little sedative and leaves her to relax alone. Later, Eva pays her a brief visit in her chamber. But when she departs the room, she is unexpectedly transported into a flaming building. Eva notices a young girl in the corridor holding something. The girl then vanishes, leaving Eva encircled by scorching hands reaching out for her. One of the hands grips her wrist, waking her up with a scream. As the others hurry to her side, we notice a burn mark on her wrist. Following this encounter, Frank begins to recognize the similarities between Eva's dream and Zoe's recurring nightmares. But before Nico can completely comprehend the problem, he realizes that a mystery entity has been secretly watching their actions and downloading data from their system for several months. It becomes clear that whoever is behind this knows where they are and poses a risk to their safety. Frank, realizing that they are in danger, pushes the team to leave the lab immediately. Moments later, Nico discovers Zoe is no longer sitting on the couch and surveys the room with concern. As the lights begin to flicker, she comes behind him, seemingly out of nowhere. Zoe then begs him to help her understand the strange changes she's going through. In a desperate attempt to manipulate him, she even goes in for a kiss, but Nico flatly refuses her. Unfortunately, this proves to be a disastrous decision when the devil inside Zoe wakes. Her eyes abruptly go black, and the room becomes dark. Nico tries to calm her down, but she suddenly vanishes. Then, via a security camera feed, we see Nico being dragged into a neighboring closet by an unknown entity. He yells and pleads for assistance, but no one hears him. Moments later, Zoe reappears and uses her telekinetic abilities to shatter the closet, killing poor Nico mercilessly. In the following scene, the remaining group members arrive to check on Zoe and discover her sitting calmly on a couch. They quiz her about Nico's whereabouts, but she claims to be oblivious. As the seconds pass, Clay becomes increasingly concerned and attempts to summon aid. But before he can do so, the power goes out, leaving them without a way of communicating. Clay, frustrated and desperate for answers, confronts Zoe and demands to know what she did. But she maintains an eerie calm and uses her abilities to suffocate Clay with his own vaping equipment. When the others learn of this, they rush to intervene. However, despite their best attempts, the poor person dies. Frank then looks at his fiancée and finds her creepy smile. This eventually lets him recognize her role in all of this. Just then, the lights go out, and Zoe disappears into the shadows. Frank knows she would come after him, so he plans to kill her first. He prepares a syringe laden with toxic chemicals commonly used to euthanize animals. He then explains his plan to Eva and advises her to stay concealed until he returns for her. Soon later, Frank approaches Zoe in the corridor and assures her that he will find a solution. She asks him, tearfully, whether he still loves her, and he says yes. However, she reads his mind and discovers that he doesn't. Zoe realizes he no longer loves or wants her around. In a fit of wrath, she fatally snaps his neck, killing him instantly. She then injects herself with the remaining serum, making her even powerful. Meanwhile, Eva prepares a syringe with fatal poisons. She wants to finish Zoe once and for all. But as she reaches her, she is abruptly thrown back into the flaming building. There, she encounters a young girl who is the younger version of Zoe. This girl offers her a book of matches, revealing that she lit the fire. Eva suddenly understands why Zoe has been having nightmares. It's because she still feels guilty for sparking a fire that killed so many people. Eva then consoles the young Zoe, assuring her that it was not totally her fault. She begs her to open the neighbor's door and let go of her burdens. However, they are abruptly stopped by the adult Zoe, who has now assumed a demonic appearance. She slowly approaches them, her eyes darkened and her flesh scorched. But before she can reach them, young Zoe opens the neighbor's door, allowing a blinding flood of light to surround them. We are then transported back to reality, where Eva had inserted the syringe into Zoe's chest. The latter eventually recognizes her error and apologizes, but Eva delivers another shot, killing her effectively. Soon later, paramedics and firefighters rush into the building. One of the firefighters approaches Eva and offers to help. But at this point, she learns that Zoe's dead body is missing. In a surprising turn of events, it is revealed that the fireman is actually Zoe in disguise. Eva tries to flee, but the wicked bitch snaps her neck, murdering her immediately. In the aftermath, Zoe places Frank's lifeless body on a table and injects him with serum. He unexpectedly comes to life. That was the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more material like this, and please press the like button to assist us. Also, if you want us to recap your favorite movie, leave a comment. Take care until the next time.